I never thought a propane tank would be the catalyst for exposing one of the most elaborate theft rings in suburban Virginia. But here we are. My name is Nathan Foster, and I live in the Meadowbrook Estates, a planned community just outside Richmond that prides itself on maintaining property values and enforcing ridiculous rules about mailbox colors. I work from home as a software engineer, which means I am acutely aware of everything that happens in my neighborhood during business hours. And let me tell you, the HOA board president, Brenda Carmichael, made sure everyone knew when something did not meet her standards. The whole situation started on a Tuesday morning in late September. I was sitting at my desk, debugging some code for a client, when my phone buzzed with an alert I had not seen in months. The notification was from my smart propane tank gauge, the kind that monitors fuel levels and sends updates to your phone via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I had installed it last winter after getting caught without propane during a cold snap, and it had been incredibly useful for planning refills. The alert read, "Warning. Propane level decreased by 37% in the last 2 hours. Possible leak detected." My heart jumped. A leak could mean serious danger, potential fire hazard, or worse. I immediately saved my work and headed outside to check the tank. The September air was crisp, leaves just starting to turn orange and yellow on the oak trees lining my property. My house sat on a corner lot, which meant I had a bit more yard than most neighbors, but also more visibility. The propane tank was positioned on the side of the house, partially hidden by some decorative shrubs I had planted to make it less of an eyesore. When I rounded the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, bent over my propane tank with a wrench in hand and a hose leading to a smaller portable tank, was Brenda Carmichael herself. She was wearing her typical outfit, those khaki capri pants with a floral blouse, her helmet of blonde highlighted hair perfectly styled despite the manual labor she was apparently engaged in. She had not noticed me yet, too focused on the task of siphoning propane from my tank into what looked like a 20-pound portable cylinder. "What the hell are you doing?" I called out, my voice sharp enough to make her jump. Brenda whirled around, her face flushing red. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights, but then her expression shifted into something I had seen many times before, that particular blend of indignation and superiority that only an entitled HOA board president could muster. "Nathan, you scared me half to death," she said, pressing a hand to her chest dramatically. "I was just borrowing a little propane. My tank ran out and I am hosting the HOA executive committee meeting at my house tonight. I need it for the grill." I stared at her, genuinely shocked by the audacity. "Borrowing? Brenda, you are literally stealing propane from my tank without asking. That is theft." She waved her hand dismissively as if I was overreacting to a minor social faux pas. "Oh, do not be so dramatic. We are all neighbors here." "What is a little propane between friends? I was going to tell you about it later." "We are not friends, Brenda, and even if we were, you do not just help yourself to someone else's property. How did you even know how to siphon propane?" She had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "YouTube," she admitted. "It is not that complicated. Look, I will pay you back for it. How much could it possibly cost?" $20. "That is not the point," I said, walking closer. The hose she had rigged up was still connected between my tank and hers. "The point is you trespassed on my property and stole from me. Disconnect that right now." Brenda huffed, but began unscrewing the connection. "You are being incredibly unreasonable about this, Nathan. The HOA has been very lenient with you regarding several violations on your property. I would think you would want to maintain a good relationship with the board." And there it was, the veiled threat that Brenda loved to use whenever anyone pushed back against her. She had been after me for months about various alleged violations, including the color of my front door, which she claimed was not within the approved palette, even though I had the original purchase documents showing it was, and my mailbox, which she said was 2 inches too tall, which it was not. Lenient, I repeated. Brenda, I have not violated a single HOA rule, and you know it. Every complaint you have filed against me has been dismissed because you were wrong. She straightened up, having disconnected the hose, and fixed me with a cold stare. We will see about that. You might want to reconsider your tone with me, Nathan. I have a lot of influence in this community. Is that a threat? It is a fact. She picked up her portable propane tank, which I noticed was now significantly fuller than it had any right to be. I will have someone Venmo you for the propane. Good day. She walked off my property with her stolen goods, leaving me standing there in a mix of anger and disbelief. I pulled out my phone and checked the Gauge app again. Sure enough, my tank had gone from 78% full to 41%. Brenda had not taken a little bit for a casual cookout. She had stolen nearly 40% of my propane, which at current prices was well over $100 worth. I took photos of everything, the connection points on my tank, the marks in the dirt where her tank had sat, and even a shot of her walking away with the portable cylinder, though that one was from behind and would not prove much. Then I went inside and did what any reasonable person in the 21st century does when wronged. I checked my security cameras. I had installed a simple Ring doorbell camera on my front door, and a couple of outdoor cameras covering the driveway and side yard after a package had gone missing last year. The side yard camera had a perfect view of my propane tank, and sure enough, there was Brenda in full high definition, arriving with her empty tank at 10:47 a.m., spending nearly 20 minutes setting up the siphon, and filling her tank before I had confronted her at 11:08 a.m. The video was damning. It clearly showed her arriving alone, looking around to make sure no one was watching, and then proceeding with the theft. There was no ambiguity here, no possible explanation that would paint this as an innocent misunderstanding. Brenda Carmichael had committed theft, and I had video proof. My first instinct was to call the police, but I hesitated. Part of me wondered if this was worth the escalation. It was propane, not jewelry or electronics. Would the cops even care? But the more I thought about Brenda's entitled attitude, her threat about using her HOA influence against me, and the sheer audacity of stealing from a neighbor in broad daylight, the angrier I got. I decided to take a different approach first. I would go through the proper channels, report this to the HOA board minus Brenda, and see if they would handle it internally. If that did not work, then I would involve law enforcement. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA board consisted of 5 members. Brenda as president, Tom Richardson as vice president, Sandra Wu as treasurer, Mike Patterson as secretary, and Diane Foster, no relation to me, as a general board member. I had Tom's email from previous correspondence about a community cleanup event, so I sent him a detailed message explaining what had happened, attaching the video evidence and screenshots from my Propane Gauge app. Within an hour, Tom called me. "Nathan, I just watched the video. I cannot believe this. Are you absolutely sure that is Brenda?" "Tom, you can see her face clearly in the footage. It is definitely her." He sighed heavily. "This is bad, really bad. Look, I need to loop in the other board members, but I want to handle this carefully. Brenda has been president for 6 years, and she has a lot of supporters in the community. If we come at this wrong, it could split the entire neighborhood. Tom, she committed theft. This is not a political issue. I understand that, I do. Just give me 24 hours to talk to Sandra, Mike, and Deanne. We will call an emergency board meeting and address this properly. Can you hold off on calling the police until then? I was not thrilled about the delay, but Tom seemed genuinely concerned and willing to take action. Fine. 24 hours. But if the board does not handle this appropriately, I am filing a police report. Fair enough. I will be in touch soon. After hanging up, I tried to get back to work but found it impossible to concentrate. I kept replaying the encounter in my head. Brenda's dismissive attitude, her casual admission of theft, her threats about HOA violations. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this probably was not her first time pulling something like this. You do not just wake up one day and decide to siphon propane from a neighbor's tank. That takes a certain level of comfort with crossing boundaries. I decided to do some digging. I started with the HOA's Facebook group, a private page where residents posted about neighborhood issues, upcoming events, and occasional complaints. I scrolled back through months of posts, looking for anything related to Brenda or suspicious activity. What I found was enlightening. There were multiple posts from different residents complaining about missing items. Someone named Carol mentioned that firewood had disappeared from her backyard shed. Another resident, Jeff, posted about a bag of water softener salt vanishing from his garage. A woman named Patricia said her outdoor Christmas decorations were taken down and disappeared, which Brenda had commented on, claiming they were removed due to HOA violations, though Patricia insisted she never got a warning notice. None of these incidents alone seemed connected to Brenda, but when I looked at them together, a pattern emerged. All of these people had, at some point, been on Brenda's bad side. Carol had voted against Brenda in the last HOA election. Jeff had filed a formal complaint about Brenda's dog barking at night. Patricia had challenged Brenda's authority to fine her for a supposed yard violation. I started taking screenshots of everything, building a file of evidence that suggested Brenda might have been using her position as HOA president to retaliate against residents she did not like. It was still circumstantial, but combined with the video of her stealing my propane, it painted a picture of someone who believed the rules did not apply to her. That evening, I got a text from Tom. Board meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the community center. You are invited to present your evidence. Brenda does not know what this is about yet, I replied. I will be there. The next day dragged on forever. I tried to work, managed to get a few hours of productive coding done, but mostly I was thinking about the meeting. I prepared a presentation on my laptop, organizing the video footage, the gauge data, photos, and the screenshots from the Facebook group. I wanted to be thorough and professional, giving the board no reason to dismiss this as a personal vendetta. At 6:45 p.m., I drove the short distance to the Meadowbrook Estates Community Center, a modest building that hosted HOA meetings, neighborhood events, and the occasional kid's birthday party. Several cars were already in the parking lot, including Brenda's silver Lexus SUV. My stomach tightened with anxiety, but I reminded myself that I had done nothing wrong. I was the victim here. Inside, the main meeting room was set up with a long table at the front where the board members sat, and rows of chairs facing them for residents. Tom, Sandra, Mike, and Deanne were already seated at the table. Brenda sat in her usual spot in the center, looking confident and composed. A few other residents were scattered in the audience chairs, probably regular meeting attendees who showed up to every board session. Tom stood up when he saw me. Nathan, thanks for coming. Why don't you take a seat and we will get started in a few minutes? I sat down in the front row, my laptop bag on the chair next to me. Brenda glanced at me with an expression that was hard to read, somewhere between curiosity and annoyance. She clearly did not know why I was there or what this meeting was about. At exactly 7, Tom called the meeting to order. "Good evening, everyone. We have called this emergency board meeting to address a serious matter that was brought to our attention yesterday. Nathan Foster has presented evidence of a concerning incident involving a board member, and we felt it needed immediate attention." He turned to me. "Nathan, would you like to present your case?" I stood up, pulling my laptop out and connecting it to the projector screen at the front of the room. Brenda's expression shifted to confusion, then alarm as the screen lit up with the video footage of her at my propane tank. On Tuesday, September 24th, at approximately 10:47 a.m., Brenda Carmichael trespassed on my property and stole propane from my tank, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. I hit play on the video. The room fell silent as everyone watched Brenda on screen, sneaking onto my property, setting up her siphon equipment and filling her portable tank. The video was clear, undeniable. When it ended, I continued. "I only discovered the theft because my propane tank has a smart gauge that sends alerts to my phone when there are significant changes in fuel level. I received this notification." I showed the screenshot of the alert. When I confronted Mrs. Carmichael, she admitted to taking the propane, claimed she was borrowing it, and then threatened to use her position on the HOA board to retaliate against me when I objected. Brenda had gone pale. She stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Nathan is completely misrepresenting what happened. I made an innocent mistake. I thought we had an understanding between neighbors." "An understanding?" I turned to face her. "You trespassed on my property and stole over $100 worth of propane without asking. You only called it borrowing after you got caught. And there was no mistake about it. The video shows you looking around to make sure no one was watching. You are twisting this into something it is not," Brenda shot back, her voice rising. "I have served this community faithfully for 6 years. I have dedicated countless hours to maintaining our property values and enforcing our standards. And this is the thanks I get, being accused of theft over a trivial amount of propane." Sandra Wu, the treasurer, spoke up for the first time. "Brenda, the video is pretty clear. You took propane from Nathan's tank without permission. That is theft, regardless of the amount or your intentions." "I was going to pay him back," Brenda insisted. "I told him that. This is being blown completely out of proportion." Tom leaned forward. "Brenda, even if you intended to pay him back, you should have asked first. You cannot just take things from other people's property. And Nathan mentioned you made threats about using your HOA position against him. Is that true?" Brenda's jaw clenched. "I did not threaten anyone. I simply reminded Nathan that the board takes note of how residents conduct themselves in the community." "That is a threat," Mike Patterson, the secretary, said quietly. "You are essentially saying you will use your authority to punish him for reporting your theft." "I did not steal anything," Brenda snapped, "and I resent the accusation. I decided to play my trump card. This is not the first time items have gone missing from properties belonging to residents who have crossed you, is it, Brenda?" I pulled up the screenshots from the Facebook group. Carol's firewood, Jeff's water softener salt, Patricia's Christmas decorations. All of these people had conflicts with you, and then their property mysteriously disappeared. Brenda's face turned red. "That is absurd. I had nothing to do with any of that." "You are making wild accusations based on coincidence." "Maybe," I admitted. "But the propane theft is not a coincidence. It is documented fact, and I think it warrants investigation into whether there is a pattern of behavior here." Diane, who had been silent until now, cleared her throat. I think we need to take a vote on Brenda's position as board president. This is serious enough that we cannot just ignore it. You cannot remove me, Brenda said, her voice tight. The bylaws require a vote of the full membership for removal, not just the board. Tom nodded. That is true. But we can suspend you pending an investigation and call for a special election. I move that we immediately suspend Brenda Carmichael from her duties as HOA president and schedule a community vote on her removal. I second that, Sandra said immediately. All in favor? Tom looked around the table. Sandra, Mike, and Deanne all raised their hands. Tom raised his as well. The motion passes. Brenda, you are suspended effective immediately. We will be sending a letter to all residents explaining the situation and scheduling a vote. Brenda looked like she was about to explode. Her hands were shaking, her face nearly purple with rage. This is a witch hunt. You are all going to regret this. I have friends in this community, powerful friends. You think you can just push me out after everything I have done? Brenda, I would suggest you calm down, Tom said firmly. This meeting is over. Please leave. For a moment I thought she might refuse, but then she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard that the windows rattled. The room sat in stunned silence for a few seconds. Then Tom turned to me. Nathan, I apologize that it took this long to address concerns about Brenda's behavior. I think a lot of us suspected she was overstepping, but no one had concrete proof until now. What do you want to do about the theft itself? Are you planning to press charges? I had been thinking about this all day. I want to see how the community vote goes first. If she is removed and accepts responsibility, maybe we can resolve this without involving the police. But if she continues to deny it or retaliates in any way, I am filing a report immediately. That is fair, Tom said. We will send out the letter tomorrow and schedule the vote for 2 weeks from now. In the meantime, if Brenda contacts you or comes onto your property again, document everything. I agreed and packed up my laptop. A few of the residents who had been watching approached me as I was leaving. One woman, who introduced herself as Patricia, the one whose Christmas decorations had disappeared, thanked me for speaking up. I always suspected Brenda took my decorations, but I had no proof, she said. She claimed they violated HOA rules, but when I asked for the specific regulation, she could never produce it. Then they were just gone one day. I am glad someone finally caught her in the act. Over the next 2 weeks, the neighborhood was in upheaval. Tom sent out the promised letter to all residents, explaining that Brenda had been suspended pending a vote due to serious allegations of misconduct and abuse of power. The letter did not go into specific details about the propane theft, but word spread fast. Within days, everyone in Meadowbrook Estates knew what had happened. The reaction was mixed. About half the community was outraged on my behalf and ready to vote Brenda out immediately. The other half, mostly her friends and longtime supporters, insisted this was a personal attack and that Brenda was being railroaded. Some of her supporters started a counter-campaign, posting in the Facebook group about all the good things Brenda had done as president, the improvements to common areas, the successful negotiation of landscaping contracts, the community events she had organized. I stayed out of it for the most part, only posting the facts when people asked directly. I shared the video footage publicly, with Brenda's face clearly visible, and let it speak for itself. The propane gauge alerts, the timeline, everything was documented and verifiable. Brenda herself was not silent. She sent an email to the entire community list, which she still had access to despite her suspension, claiming that I had set her up, that the video was taken out of context, and that she was the victim of a coordinated effort to remove her from power because she had been too effective at enforcing HOA rules. She even suggested that I had somehow faked the propane gauge alerts, which was ridiculous, and showed how desperate she was becoming. Tom finally had to revoke her access to the community email list after that message, which only made things worse. Brenda started going door to door, campaigning to keep her position, telling anyone who would listen that she was being persecuted. One evening, about a week before the scheduled vote, I was in my garage working on some home improvement projects when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I walked out to find a Richmond Police Department patrol car and my stomach dropped. Had something happened? Was this about Brenda? An officer stepped out, a tall man in his 40s with graying hair. Evening. Are you Nathan Foster? Yes, sir. Is everything okay? I am Officer Martinez. I am here about a complaint filed by a Brenda Carmichael. She is claiming you have been harassing her and threatening her. I felt my blood pressure spike. That is completely false. I have not contacted Brenda at all since the incident where she stole propane from my property. Officer Martinez pulled out a small notebook. She says you have been posting defamatory content about her online and encouraging other residents to vandalize her property. That is a lie, I said firmly. I posted a video of her stealing from me, which is factual, not defamatory. And I have absolutely not encouraged anyone to vandalize anything. Do you want to see the video? He nodded. I would, actually. I pulled out my phone and showed him the footage of Brenda siphoning propane, along with the gauge alerts and timeline. Officer Martinez watched carefully, then looked up at me. This is pretty clear-cut, he said. Have you filed a theft report about this? Not yet. The HOA board is handling it internally first. There is a community vote scheduled to remove her from the board. I told them if she did not accept responsibility or if she retaliated, I would file charges. Well, filing a false police report about harassment is definitely retaliation, Officer Martinez said. I would recommend you go ahead and file that theft report. What she is doing here is trying to muddy the waters and make herself look like the victim. Get ahead of it. He gave me instructions on how to file the report online and his card in case I needed to reference this conversation. After he left, I immediately went inside and filed a formal theft complaint with the Richmond Police Department, attaching all my evidence, the video, the gauge data, photos, everything. The next morning, I woke up to find that someone had spray-painted "liar" across my garage door in red paint. My security cameras had caught it happening at 3:17 a.m. The person was wearing dark clothing and a hood, their face not clearly visible, but their build and height looked remarkably similar to Brenda's adult son, Dustin, who I knew lived with her. I called Officer Martinez immediately and filed a vandalism report, sending him the footage. He sighed when he saw it. I will be honest with you, Mr. Foster, this is escalating in a concerning way. The video is not clear enough to definitively identify the vandal, but given the context and timing, I would say you should be very careful. Document everything. Consider installing more cameras and do not engage with Mrs. Carmichael or her family at all. I took his advice. I installed 2 additional cameras covering different angles of my property and bought a dash cam for my car. I also took photos of the graffiti from multiple angles before cleaning it off, which took me the better part of the afternoon and a lot of paint remover. The vandalism seemed to be the final straw for many of the fence-sitters in the community. Even some of Brenda's supporters started questioning whether she was really the victim she claimed to be. The Facebook group erupted with arguments, people demanding accountability, others defending Brenda, and a few voices calling for everyone to calm down and let the vote proceed fairly. The vote was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at the community center. Every household in Meadowbrook Estates got one vote, and a simple majority was needed to remove Brenda from the board permanently. I showed up early, wanting to see how it would play out. The turnout was massive. I had never seen so many residents at an HOA meeting. The parking lot was completely full, with cars lining the street. Inside, every chair was taken, and people stood along the walls. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Tom, serving as acting president, called the meeting to order and explained the voting procedure. Each household would receive a ballot, mark their choice to either remove Brenda or keep her on the board, and submit it anonymously. Tom and Sandra would count the votes together, with Mike observing to ensure fairness. Brenda stood up before the voting began. "I would like to address the community before you make your decision," she announced. Tom hesitated but nodded. "You have 5 minutes." Brenda walked to the front, her expression a mix of defiance and desperation. "I have served this community with dedication and integrity for 6 years. In that time, we have seen our property values increase by over 20%. Our common areas are beautiful and well maintained. We have successfully fought off 2 attempts by developers to build high-density apartments adjacent to our neighborhood. I have done all of this without asking for anything in return except respect and trust." She paused, looking around the room. "What is happening here today is a travesty. Nathan Foster has taken a simple misunderstanding and turned it into a campaign to destroy my reputation. Yes, I made a mistake. I should have asked before borrowing the propane. I admit that. But I was going to pay him back, and I apologized. Instead of accepting that apology like a reasonable neighbor, he has chosen to drag me through the mud, to post videos of me online, to encourage harassment and vandalism of my property." I almost stood up to object to that last part, but Officer Martinez, who was present at the back of the room in plain clothes observing, caught my eye and shook his head slightly. I stayed seated. "I am asking you all to look at the bigger picture," Brenda continued. "Do we want to be the kind of community that turns on each other over minor mistakes? Or do we want to be the kind of community that forgives and moves forward together? I hope you will choose the latter and vote to keep me on the board. Thank you." She sat down, and for a moment the room was quiet. Then Tom stood up. "Thank you, Brenda. Now, before we vote, I want to remind everyone that this is not just about one incident. The board has been reviewing several complaints about misuse of authority during Brenda's tenure, and we believe there is a pattern that warrants serious concern. But ultimately, the decision is yours as residents. Let's proceed with the vote." Ballots were distributed, and the room filled with the sound of pens on paper. I marked my vote, remove, and submitted it along with everyone else. Then came the waiting. Tom and Sandra took the ballot box to a side room to count while everyone else sat in anxious silence. It took nearly 45 minutes. When they finally emerged, Tom's expression was neutral, but Sandra looked relieved. They returned to the front table, and Tom stood with a piece of paper in his hand. "The votes have been counted and verified," he announced. Total ballots cast, 137. Votes to remove Brenda Carmichael from the HOA board, 98. Votes to keep her on the board, 39. By a clear majority, Brenda Carmichael is hereby removed from her position effective immediately. The room erupted. Some people applauded, others groaned, and Brenda sat frozen in her chair, her face ashen. She looked like she could not quite process what had just happened. Tom banged a gavel to restore order. "We will be holding elections for a new president at our next regular board meeting in 2 weeks. This meeting is now adjourned." People began filing out, some stopping to talk in small groups, others leaving quickly to avoid confrontation. I was gathering my things when Brenda approached me. For a second, I thought she might actually apologize or at least acknowledge what had happened, but instead, she leaned in close and whispered, "You have made a huge mistake. You have no idea who you are dealing with." Then she turned and walked away before I could respond. Officer Martinez appeared at my elbow. "You hear that?" "Yeah." That sounded like another threat. "Be very careful, Mr. Foster. People like this do not go quietly." He was right to warn me. Over the next few days, things got worse. My mailbox was knocked over in the middle of the night. Someone let the air out of all 4 of my car tires while it was parked in my driveway. A bag of garbage was dumped on my front lawn. Each time, my cameras caught figures in dark clothing and hoods, but never clear enough to make a positive identification. I reported each incident to the police, building a case file that was growing thicker by the day. Officer Martinez told me they were investigating, but that without clear video identification of the perpetrators, it was hard to make arrests. He suggested I might want to consider a restraining order against Brenda. I was seriously considering it when things took a dramatic turn. One of my neighbors, Carol, the one who had reported missing firewood, called me out of the blue. "Nathan, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "I was not sure if I should get involved, but after seeing what Brenda has been putting you through, I cannot stay silent anymore." "What is it?" "Last year, when my firewood went missing, I actually saw Brenda's son loading it into their truck. I did not say anything at the time because Brenda told me it was being confiscated for violating fire code, which I did not think was true, but I was not sure. She said if I made a fuss about it, the HOA would fine me for multiple violations. I was scared, so I let it go. My heart raced. "Carol, would you be willing to make a statement about that to the police?" "Yes, I am done being intimidated by her." Carol was not the only one. Once word spread that people were coming forward, I got calls from Jeff about his water softener salt, Patricia about her Christmas decorations, and even a man named Robert who said Brenda had taken a generator from his shed claiming it was a noise violation hazard. But he never got it back and never received any official violation notice. I compiled all of these statements and delivered them to Officer Martinez. He reviewed everything with a detective, and they decided there was enough evidence to pursue charges, not just for the propane theft, but for a pattern of theft and abuse of authority. A week after the HOA vote, 2 police officers showed up at Brenda's house with a warrant for her arrest. She was charged with multiple counts of theft, criminal trespass, and filing a false police report. Her son, Dustin, was also charged with vandalism related to the graffiti on my garage door after enhanced analysis of my security footage and matching paint evidence. The arrest made the local news. "Former HOA president arrested for theft ring" was the headline on the Richmond Times-Dispatch website. The story detailed how Brenda had allegedly been using her position to steal from residents under the guise of enforcing HOA regulations, then threatening those who complained with fines and violations. The neighborhood was in shock. Even people who had supported Brenda could not deny the evidence anymore. Multiple victims, documented thefts, a clear pattern of behavior. It was overwhelming. Brenda posted bail and immediately hired a lawyer, a guy named Richard Chen, who had a reputation for defending white-collar criminals. He released a statement claiming Brenda was innocent, and that this was a malicious prosecution driven by personal vendettas. But the evidence was too strong. Over the next few months, as the case moved through the court system, more details emerged. Police found some of the stolen items, including Patricia's Christmas decorations and Robert's generator, in Brenda's garage. Her son Dustin confessed to the vandalism in exchange for a reduced charge and admitted his mother had asked him to do it. The prosecution offered Brenda a plea deal: plead guilty to theft and filing a false report, pay restitution to all victims, perform community service, and serve 2 years of probation. The alternative was going to trial and potentially facing jail time if convicted on all counts. Her lawyer advised her to take the deal. In February, 5 months after she had stolen propane from my tank, Brenda Carmichael stood in a Richmond courtroom and pleaded guilty. The judge was not sympathetic. "Mrs. Carmichael, you were in a position of trust in your community," the judge said sternly. "You were elected to serve your neighbors, to uphold the rules fairly and maintain the integrity of your homeowners association. Instead, you abused that trust for personal gain. You stole from the very people who trusted you, and when you were caught, you tried to cover it up with more lies and intimidation. That is not just theft. That is a betrayal." He sentenced her to 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay over $8,000 in restitution to all the victims, including $1,200 to me for the propane and damage to my garage door. Brenda was also permanently banned from serving on the HOA board or any other homeowners association in Virginia. The judge made that a specific condition of her probation. As I sat in the courtroom watching her accept the sentence, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Vindication. But also a kind of sadness. Brenda had spent 6 years in a position of authority, and instead of using it to genuinely help the community, she had let power corrupt her. She had convinced herself that the rules did not apply to her, that she could take what she wanted because she deserved it for her service. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into the cold February air. Officer Martinez was waiting outside, having attended the hearing as the reporting officer on the case. "Justice served," he said, shaking my hand. "Thanks for being persistent and documenting everything. A lot of people would have just let the propane thing go." "I almost did," I admitted. But then she threatened me, and I realized if I did not stand up to her, she would just keep doing this to other people. Well, she will not be doing it anymore. The aftermath of the case brought some positive changes to Meadowbrook Estates. The HOA held elections for a new board, and the residents chose people who were committed to transparency and fair enforcement of rules. Tom remained as president, and the new board implemented a system of checks and balances to prevent any one person from having too much authority. They also reviewed all of the violations and fines Brenda had issued during her tenure, dismissing most of them as baseless. Several residents got refunds for fines they had paid under duress. As for me, I finally got around to refilling my propane tank, and I got a notification from my smart gauge that it was back to 100%. I smiled at my phone, grateful for the technology that had started this whole chain of events. Without that alert, I never would have caught Brenda in the act, and she might have continued her scheme for years. My relationship with the neighborhood improved dramatically. People who had avoided me during the controversy, not wanting to take sides, now greeted me warmly when I checked my mail or walked my dog. Carol, Jeff, Patricia, and Robert all thanked me personally for helping them get justice for what had been taken from them. One Saturday afternoon in late March, I was outside working in my yard when Patricia stopped by with a plate of cookies. "I wanted to thank you again," she said, handing me the plate. "Not just for the Christmas decorations, though I am glad to have them back, but for showing us all that we do not have to put up with bullies, even when they are in charge." "Anyone would have done the same thing," I said. She shook her head. "No, they would not have. A lot of people knew Brenda was overstepping, but no one wanted to be the one to challenge her. You did, and you dealt with all the backlash that came with it. That took courage. After she left, I sat on my porch with a cookie and thought about the past 6 months. It had been stressful, frustrating, and at times genuinely frightening. But it had also been the right thing to do. Brenda had been stealing from people and using her authority to cover it up. Someone had to stop her. The propane gauge on my phone buzzed with its daily status update. I glanced at it. Tank level, 98%, all systems normal. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the spring sunshine and the quiet satisfaction of knowing my neighborhood was a better place than it had been before. All because of a simple alert on my phone and a willingness to stand up for what was right. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA was not perfect. No homeowners association ever is. There would always be disputes about rules, disagreements about budgets, and the occasional difficult neighbor. But at least now, there was accountability. The board could not just do whatever it wanted without consequences. In April, I attended my first HOA meeting since Brenda's removal. The atmosphere was completely different. Tom ran the meeting efficiently but democratically, taking input from residents and actually listening to concerns instead of dismissing them. When someone raised an issue about a confusing rule regarding fence heights, the board agreed to review it and clarify the language rather than just enforcing it rigidly. During the open comment period, I stood up to address the group. I just want to say thank you to everyone who supported the effort to hold our leadership accountable. I know it was divisive and difficult, but I think we came out of it stronger as a community. We proved that we can govern ourselves fairly and that no one is above the rules. There was applause, genuine and warm. As I sat down, I caught sight of Brenda's former supporters, the ones who had defended her so vigorously. A few looked away embarrassed, but one woman, Helen, who had been particularly vocal in Brenda's defense, approached me after the meeting. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I said some harsh things about you during all of this. I thought Brenda was being unfairly targeted. I did not realize how serious it was until all the evidence came out. I am sorry." "I appreciate that," I told her. "I know it looked bad from the outside." Brenda was good at playing the victim. She really was, Helen agreed. "I think that is what I am most angry about. She made fools of all of us who believed in her." That seemed to be the prevailing sentiment among Brenda's former allies. They felt betrayed, used, manipulated. Brenda had cultivated their loyalty by doing favors, being friendly, presenting herself as the hard-working defender of the neighborhood's values. Meanwhile, she was stealing from residents and abusing her power. I never saw Brenda again after the sentencing. She and her son moved out of Meadowbrook Estates within a month, selling their house quickly and quietly. Rumor had it they relocated to North Carolina to live with relatives. I did not care where they went as long as they were gone. The new family that moved into Brenda's old house, the Johnsons, were lovely people with 2 young kids and a friendly golden retriever. They invited me over for a backyard barbecue in May, and I brought my own propane tank just to be safe, which got a good laugh when I explained the story. "So you are the guy who took down the crazy HOA president," Mr. Johnson said, flipping burgers on the grill. "We heard about it from the realtor. Actually made us feel better about buying here, knowing the community dealt with a problem instead of ignoring it." "Just did what anyone should do when they see something wrong," I said. "Not everyone would have," Mrs. Johnson chimed in. "Most people avoid conflict, especially with someone in authority. You did the right thing." As summer arrived and life in Meadowbrook Estates settled into a comfortable routine, I found myself reflecting on how a simple, smart propane gauge had changed everything. It was such a small piece of technology, just a sensor and a Bluetooth connection, but it had exposed corruption, brought justice to multiple victims, and ultimately made an entire community better. I told this story to my software engineering colleagues during a video conference, and they were amazed. One of them joked that I should write a review of the propane gauge. 5 stars, caught a thief, and dismantled an HOA theft ring. But the real lesson, I thought, was not about the technology. It was about paying attention, documenting everything, and being willing to stand up when something was wrong, even if it was uncomfortable. Those surveillance cameras, the smart gauge, the detailed records I kept, all of that was crucial. But more important was the decision to not just let it go, to not accept Brenda's dismissive attitude and veiled threats. In July, the HOA board asked me if I would be interested in joining as a general member. One of the positions had opened up when a longtime board member moved away for work. I thought about it carefully. Did I really want to get involved in HOA politics after everything that had happened? But then I realized that was exactly why I should do it. If good people stayed away from positions of authority because they were afraid of conflict or did not want the responsibility, then those positions would be filled by people like Brenda. People who wanted power for the wrong reasons. I accepted the nomination and ran unopposed. At the August meeting, I was officially sworn in as a board member of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. My first act was to propose a new policy requiring video documentation and written warnings before any property could be confiscated for violations. The board approved it unanimously. We also implemented a transparent complaint process where residents could challenge any HOA action and have it reviewed by the full board, not just the president. And we started publishing detailed financial reports every quarter so everyone could see exactly how their HOA fees were being spent. These changes were not flashy or dramatic, but they made a real difference. Residents felt more involved and less like the HOA was some distant authority that could arbitrarily make their lives difficult. Compliance with actual rules actually improved because people understood the reasons behind them and felt they were being applied fairly. One evening in September, almost exactly a year after Brenda had stolen my propane, I was sitting on my back deck watching the sunset when my phone buzzed. It was the Propane Gauge app. Annual maintenance reminder. Have your propane system inspected for safety and efficiency. I smiled and made a mental note to schedule that inspection. Then I opened the app and looked at the usage history for the past year. There was a clear anomaly on September 24th of last year, that sudden 37% drop that had started everything. Every other day showed normal, gradual usage or scheduled refills. That one alert, that one notification, had led to exposing a pattern of theft that had victimized at least half a dozen families. It had resulted in criminal charges, a conviction, restitution for victims, and systemic changes to prevent future abuse. All because I paid attention to what my phone was telling me. I thought about Brenda sometimes, wondering if she had learned anything from the experience or if she still saw herself as the victim. I hoped, for her sake, that she had gained some self-awareness, but I was not optimistic. People who abuse power rarely see it that way. They convince themselves they are special, that they deserve special treatment, that rules are for other people. The important thing was that she could not hurt anyone in Meadowbrook Estates anymore. The community was healing, becoming what an HOA should be. A democratic organization that maintains property values and quality of life through fair, transparent governance rather than through intimidation and theft. As fall colors began to appear on the trees again, marking the full cycle of a year since this all began, I felt genuine contentment with how things had turned out. My propane tank was full, my property was intact, and my neighborhood was a better place. The smart gauge continued its quiet work, monitoring fuel levels and sending periodic updates to my phone. I never ignored those notifications anymore. You never knew what they might reveal or what chain of events they might set in motion. Sometimes the smallest alerts led to the biggest changes, and being willing to pay attention and take action when something was wrong made all the difference. That was the real story behind the HOA Karen who stole propane from my tank and did not know the gauge sent alerts to my phone. It was not just about catching a thief. It was about standing up for what was right, supporting others who had been victimized, and working to create a better community for everyone. And it all started with one simple notification on a Tuesday morning in September.